I have a background in the public schools. And then I got pregnant with my son, worked for another year, immediately got pregnant with my daughter, and decided I needed to take some time off and be a stay-at-home mom. It was during this time that I found TPT. And I have often joked that I have become a better speech language pathologist during that time I took off because I had time to sit and think through the process of things, how to actually teach instead of just like panicking at a group full of 5 or 6 kids with different goals. And I became a better speech pathologist for that because I had time to sit and learn. Well, I have a new resource that I have created that has kind of followed that same structure that I learned back in those days when I was solely TPTing. And it is all about how to teach is and are, this pesky little linking verbs, strategically. So today I'm going to share with you a few tips that I have thought through on how to teach is and are strategically in speech therapy. Are you ready? Let's go. Very first tip I have, if you are trying to start teaching is and are strategically, is to peel back all of those layers. You're always going to want to take a scaffolded approach to your teaching. And I know in the past, I was particularly guilty of, if I just make them say sentences and I show them a flashcard modeling that correct production, eventually they'll get it, right? It didn't really work that way. So what I have learned now is it's much more helpful if you peel back the layers, like I said, and do a scaffolded approach. So instead of jumping right to the end result of wanting our student to use a sentence with is or are, maybe we should peel back and think, what do those is and are represent? At their most foundational level, is represents that we're talking about one thing, and are represents that we're talking about more than one thing. So before we can even begin teaching is and are, maybe we should make sure that our students understand the concept of one and more than one. So that's my first tip, is to make sure you're teaching and then your student understands the difference between one and more than one. Now, once your student has a good grasp on this one and more than one kind of thing, you're going to want to teach the actual sight words is and are. By the time we're working on this in speech therapy, usually your children or your students should be beginner readers, or they should be readers, and these are actually going to be really great skills for helping them to succeed and do better with their early reading of sight words in the classroom, because both is and are considered sight words. So that's going to help them in the classroom, but it's also going to help you because it's going to give them a visual cue so that you can reduce your prompting, your verbal prompting, and they can think through it and visually see the word better. So after I teach one and more than one, I always like to teach the actual sight words. Can the student recognize the sight word is? Can the student recognize the sight word are? So spend a lot of time doing different activities that will help you get a little bit more familiar with that and help your student get more familiar with that. Then I take it to the next step, which is helping the student understand that link that is, that sight word is, we learned, means more than one. I say is, it means one. I say is if I'm talking about one thing. I are if I'm talking about more than one thing. So we really start to drill that rule into their head. Now, as you're doing this, you're going to want to make sure that caregivers have opportunity to practice as well, because it's going to be much more beneficial for your students to be hearing this at home as well as to be hearing it in your speech room. So that's another tip, is to try and send some homework home explaining to parents so that they understand what you're teaching. Now, once we get to that next point of they understand that is one and are is more than one, we're going to let our students start looking at some pictures and deciding, do I need to say is or do I need to say are to describe this picture? So I have some examples of some things I want to show you to kind of exemplify these concepts for you. Okay, I'm going to try something a little bit different here, and I'm going to record myself on my computer so you can see what my computer looks like. And I want to talk to you about this resource that's on Teachers Pay Teachers. So I wanted to show this to you on my computer instead of just holding up papers, because I felt like you would be able to get a better view of what is actually in this resource, so you could know if it would be beneficial to you and your caseload. So I do start out with this strategy like we just talked about in the beginning, about how, some tips on how to teach is and are strategically and how to use this resource. And then we've got this idea, like I said, of teaching one and more than one. And on this resource, what I did was I have this one that's just like you're in class. And then if you look in the upper right-hand corner up here, you can see that this one, says homework. So I've made copies of everything for you to do at home and for you to send similar worksheets home for homework. So I've got a couple of activities for you to teach one and more than one. I've got a scavenger hunt. I've got these couple different ones to really make sure your student understands that concept, because if they don't understand that concept, the rest of everything you teach is not going to make any sense to them. I also have this cute little classroom poster that is a great visual for you to use. And now we've moved on to sight words. So we still have that visual of is one, are is more than one. And they can practice writing and recognizing the sight words. Again, we've got a homework, more sight word recognition, again, homework, more sight word recognition, and you can reiterate this every time you're talking about that is and are. Is means one, are means more than one. Another one, more, and there's some more. Can you tell it's fall when I made this resource? I was feeling all those fall vibes. So on this one, the student would sort, there are 3 boys reading, or there is 1 boy reading, and they would cut out the picture and sort it into the right side. So this is a little bit more practice of knowing when to say is or are instead of just the sight words. Homework. We've got this fun little describe a scene. You get to look at the picture and describe it, also in black and white. We've got some more making sentences, and I've got 36 flashcards for you to practice this as well. So if you are struggling with knowing how or where to start with teaching is and are in speech therapy, I really think this could be a beneficial resource to you. I will link it in the description to the link on TPT. I hope you learned something new, got some new tips if you're struggling a little bit, and I hope I can help you out. And y'all have a great day.